Hello, my dear students. This is section 2, relationships and ecosystems. Let's start our lesson for today. Today, this is the lesson. We will talk about why do organisms compete? Yes, we already know the word compete for competition or fighting each other for many different reasons. Life in an ecosystem is a constant struggle. It's a fighting or a contest. Food, water, space, and other resources are restricted or limited. So the organisms must compete or struggle to get their share of each resource of this food, water, space, and the other resources. So this fight for the limited resources is called competition. The fight for limited resources is named competition. Why do animals compete or who competes in an ecosystem? Organisms within the same population compete with one another. For example, a fox must compete with other foxes to catch rabbits. Also, populations compete with each other. Foxes and hawks, for example, they both eat rabbits. So they will compete in order to get the rabbits. Since there is a limited number of rabbits, the two predator populations compete for food. The rabbits also must compete with one another and with other herbivores or herbivore populations for their food. Yes, because all of them are herbivores. Ultimately, the survival of populations comes down to resources. So resources are the one that control the survival of populations. Then we come to a term named a limiting factor. A limiting factor is any resource that restricts the growth of populations. We said restricts means limits or controls the growth of a population. A forest, for example, gets more rainfall and much warmer in summer than in winter. So in summer, the forest can support many more populations than in winter. In this case, the rainfall and the temperature, they are limiting factors, but these are non-living things. So they are abiotic limiting factors. Common abiotic limiting factors include water, temperature, weather, soil type, space to grow, shelter, and sunlight. For example, in this picture here, we have bisons. Bisons are the American buffaloes. In winter, the food is scarce for bison. There is no enough food, or the food is hard to get for bisons. Okay, guys, then we move to talking about the biotic factors. Biotic factors also can limit ecosystems. Like what? A prairie ecosystem has more producers than a desert ecosystem. Yes. Can you see the green color? This is producers in a prairie ecosystem. Here, can you see the number of producers in a desert ecosystem? Say yes, for sure. The prairie ecosystem has more producers than a desert ecosystem. As a result, the prairie can support more herbivores to eat all these producers, which can then support more carnivores in turn. In this case, the amount of available food in the biot is the biotic limiting factor for the desert ecosystem. The amount of available food is the biotic limiting factor for the desert ecosystem. With more available food, the prairie ecosystem can support many more populations, as we said. Then together, the biotic and the abiotic factors determine the carrying capacity for each population. What is the meaning of the word carrying capacity? It means the greatest number of individuals within a population that an ecosystem can support. This is the largest number of individuals within a population that the ecosystem can support. For example, this jaguar lives in the rainforest. So a rainforest ecosystem can support a certain number of jaguars. If the jaguar population increases, their food becomes harder to find. Then what would happen here? Soon, some of the jaguars die and the population returns to its former level, to the normal level. Also, overcrowding can limit growth. As you can see, these three fishes in this tank, they can grow and they can reproduce, but these ones, no, they will never grow or reproduce. Let's see. For example, an algae population in a nutrient-rich pond in a small lake that have too much nutrients, like this one here, an algae population, the green stuff on the surface, this is the algae. May seem like it can grow indefinitely, but this is not true. But the algae will eventually get so thick, they will grow to cover all the surface of the water and will grow so thick that they will start to use up all the available oxygen in the water of the pond. Then as a result, what will happen? Without enough oxygen for respiration, the algae and the other organisms begin to die off. Then how do organisms avoid this competition? Okay, an organism avoids competition by having a specific territory and a unique role within its ecosystem. So these are two ways to avoid the competition between each other. An organism avoids competition by having a specific territory and a unique role within its ecosystem. Then the specific territory, we can name it as a habitat. Habitat is the physical place, the actual place, the actual place where an organism lives and hunts for food. These habitats can be very small or large. As you can see, some organisms may have a very small habitat. Can you see this bug, this insect? This is the pill bug. It is named the pill bug because it looks like a pill. So the pill bugs, for example, spend most of their time under and around a stump or a rock. Stump is the lower part of the tree trunk. So this is a very small habitat. Other insects like bees, a bee's habitat is larger. It is not only the hive where the bee lives, it also includes the fields and forests where the bee searches for food. Okay, then we move to the second part of avoiding competition, which is having a special role within the ecosystem. A niche, this word is niche. A niche is a special role that an organism plays in its community. For example, two birds might live in the same location and eat the same food, so the competition will be high. How these organisms or these two birds will avoid competition? One bird is active at night while the other is active during the day. Therefore, the two birds occupy different niches. Okay, also in the similar way, two birds might share the same rainforest. This is the same habitat, but eat different foods. One bird eats plants while the other eats insects. So these two birds occupy two different niches in the same community. For example, another example is the honey creepers. These honey creepers are a group of related birds found on the islands of Hawaii. So that's why they are named the Hawaiian honey creepers. They all share the same habitat. They live in the same location. So how would they avoid the competition? They are able to avoid competing with each other by eating different foods. This is great. Let's see how. The first Hawaiian honey creeper here is the Akia palau. Akia palau. This bird removes the insects from beneath the tree bark. Can you see its beak? I need you to look carefully at the shapes of each beak of these birds. So the Akia palau removes the insects from beneath the tree bark. And I suppose that you remember the bark, which is the tough outer covering of the tree trunk. Then we have the iwi, this red beautiful flower, this red beautiful bird, I'm sorry. This is the iwi. Iwi sips means drinks nectar from long-shaped tube flowers. The iwi sips nectar from long tube-shaped flowers. Then the third Hawaiian honey creeper, look at its beak. It looks like the beak of a parrot. So it is named the Maui parrotbill Hawaiian honey creeper. The Maui parrotbill finds insects and grubs, which are the small larvae, by crushing its wings. Then we move to the fourth one, the Maui creeper. Look at its beak. It is much different. The Maui creeper eats insects and grubs it finds on the leaves and the branches and also the bark of trees. Then the last one is apapain. Apapain. So the apapain sips nectar from the flowers high in the treetops of the rainforest. So what is so special about all these honey creepers? They all have very different beaks. Why does each honey creeper have a uniquely shaped beak? Because all of the honey creepers have different ways of getting food. These beaks are shaped differently depending on the food they eat. Okay, then let's move to another part. How do organisms benefit from interactions with one another? Living things in an ecosystem depend on one another. Yes, for example, the animals in an ecosystem depend on the plants and other producers. For what? For food, for sure. Okay, plants depend on animals for the carbon dioxide, which is used in the process of photosynthesis. These interlocking relationships are examples of interdependence. Inter means between, dependence means depending on or relying on. So this is a depending relationship between the organisms. This interdependence means the reliance, the depending on, the counting on, or the counting of organisms on other organisms for their survival. So interdependence, relationship between organisms in order to survive. Some forms of interdependence are linked more closely than others, like symbiosis. Symbiosis is a relationship between two or more kinds of organisms that lasts over time. Symbiosis is a relationship between two or more kinds of organisms that lasts over time. The symbiosis is divided into three different relationships. The first one is mutualism. The second one is commensalism. The third one is parasitism. And we will study all of them. The first symbiotic relationship is named mutualism. 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 Mutualism is a symbiotic relationship that benefits both the organisms. Like what? The relationship between a pollinator and a flowering plant is an example of mutualism. Okay, the pollinator gets a benefit. The pollinator, which is usually an insect or a bird, gets the sweet nectar from the flower. So this is the benefit for the pollinator. What about the plants? What it gets? The plant gets its pollen transported to the pistil of another flower. So both the organisms benefit from this relationship. As you can see, this is a bee and all these yellow particles attached to its body. These are the pollen grains. While the bee drinks the nectar, the pollen grains stick to its body. When the bee started to move from one flower to another, it transports the pollen grains to the pistils of another flower. The second example of mutualism is the relationship between ants and the acacia trees. Ants and acacia trees. This is another example of mutualistic relationship. The acacia trees provide food and home for the ants. So this is the benefit for the ants. What about the tree? And in turn, the ants defend the tree against other insects. How successful is this relationship? The scientists use the chemicals to get rid of the ants on an acacia to know or to make sure that this relationship is mutualism. Without the ants, the tree soon died. Here is a picture of an acacia tree and the ants living on it. Then we move to the third and the last example of mutualism. Another example of mutualism can be seen in lichens. This is named lichens. A lichen is actually two different organisms living together. These two organisms are a fungus and an alga. A fungus and an alga. The fungus provides the alga with nutrients and home. As a result, the alga does not dry out, does not die. Then the alga in turn provides the fungus with food and oxygen. And here is a very famous example of a lichen, which is the British soldier lichen, like this one. It is called the British soldier according to the colors, like the British soldier. Then we move to the second type of symbiotic relationships, which is commensalism. Commensalism. Commensalism is a symbiotic relationship, okay, that benefits one organism without harming the other. Commensalism is a symbiotic relationship that benefits one organism without harming the other one. Okay, like what? Remoras. Remoras are fish that attach themselves to the bodies of rays and sharks. Remoras are fish that attach themselves to the bodies of rays and sharks. So what is the benefit for the remora? The remora gets food scraps, transportation, and protection from the rays. And what the rays get in turn, this is what we will know. As you can see, this is a picture of a shark. Can you see these small fishes attaching themselves to the body of the shark, or even this huge number of remoras at the body of a ray? Okay, what does the ray get from the remora? While the remora does not hurt the ray in any way, it does not help the ray either. The second example of commensalism is orchids. Another example of commensalism is orchids growing on the trees in a rainforest. As you can see, these beautiful flowers, these are the orchids. They grow on the trunk of another tree. Okay, rather than root in the ground, orchids anchor themselves high in a tree. This situation helps the orchids but does not help the tree. So it is an example of commensalism. The third example of commensalism, these are barnacles. As you can see, this is a fin of a whale, and this is the forehead of a whale. This is a close picture. So barnacles are these small organisms that live or stick to the body of the whale and start growing. Barnacles grow on the backs of whales, are also commensal. Why? The barnacles gain a home, which is the whale, and the whales are not hurt by the barnacles. The last example of commensalism, yay, this is Nemo. Now, in our science, Nemo is called clownfish. This is the scientific naming for this fish. Sometimes it is difficult to tell if a relationship between organisms is an example of commensalism. The clownfish, for example, lives in the tentacles of the sea anemone. These are all the tentacles of the sea anemone. The clownfish uses the anemone for protection. When chased by predators, the clownfish retreats, gets back to the anemone's tentacles. Okay. In this relationship, the clownfish is clearly helped by the anemone. So this is one organism gets a benefit. However, it is hard to tell if the anemone benefits from the relationship. Most scientists think that the relationship is an example of commensalism. Okay, then we move to the last symbiotic relationship, which is parasitism. What are parasites? Some partnerships are harmful for individuals in the relationship. Parasitism is a symbiotic relationship. This is the third and the last type. Parasitism is a symbiotic relationship where one organism benefits and the other is harmed. A parasite, what is a parasite? A parasite lives in or on a host organism and benefits from this relationship. Like what? For example, ticks. Ticks are parasites on dogs and other animals. Ticks use their host's body for a home and a food source. A tick attaches itself to a host, then harms the host by taking some of the host's blood. Yes, it sucks the blood of the host. The tick's host gets no benefit from this relationship, but only the tick is the one that gets all the benefits. Some parasites are very harmful for the host organism. Millions of people around the world have parasites called tapeworms. These worms live inside a person's intestinal tract. They live in the digestive system. Okay, tapeworms are more than 70 centimeters in length and that have been found in humans. Yes, this is a record. Tapeworms can harm their hosts by causing fevers and digestive problems. And here is a picture of a tapeworm that came out of a body of a human being. Okay, let's move on. Another dangerous parasite is a lamprey. Lampreys are parasitic fish. These are fish, but they are parasites. Lampreys use their sucker-like mouth to attach themselves to other fish. They have a sucker-like mouth to suck into their prey. Lampreys harm their hosts by sucking out its blood and the other body fluids. And here is the pictures of a lamprey. Can you see? It's a fish. It lives in the water, but can you see its mouth? It is equipped with many teeth in order to suck or hang itself to the body of its victim. Then we move to another type of parasites. Some parasites are protists. Do you remember the amoeba? Some parasites are protists, including the species of amoeba that causes disease called dysentery amoeba enter the host's body through contaminated food or water. So how the organisms get infected by dysentery or dysentery amoeba? By the contaminated food or water. The protist that causes sleeping sickness in Africa lives in the bodies of cows and other large animals. The protist that causes the sleeping sickness in Africa lives in the bodies of cows and other large animals. When these animals are bitten by flies like this one, this is the house fly. So when these animals are bitten by flies, the flies transfer the protists to humans, causing the disease. I hope you enjoyed that session and already understood every part. Thank you. See you inshallah in the next episode. Thank you.